Lieutenant Sarah adjusted her uniform one last time before stepping into the briefing room aboard the Galactic Defense Fleet carrier Harmony. The fabric hung loose on her small frame, and she deliberately hunched her shoulders slightly as she entered. 23 pairs of alien eyes turned toward her, representing 12 different species from across the known galaxy. The room fell silent except for the low humming of the ship's engines. Sarah could feel their stares, some curious, others dismissive, many openly hostile. She was the first human to be assigned to an elite military unit, and from the looks on their faces, most of her knew weren't happy about it. Commander, a towering with steel-gray skin and 4 arms, stood at the front of the room. His species had been warriors for over 3,000 years, and his massive frame dwarfed everyone present. When he spoke, his voice rumbled like distant thunder. "This is Lieutenant," announced, his tone flat and professional. "She will be joining Strike Team 7 as our new tactical analyst." A chorus of clicks, growls, and electronic sounds filled the room as the various species expressed their opinions in their native languages. Sarah didn't need a translator to understand the general sentiment. She caught fragments of translated comments through her earpiece. "Humans are too weak for real combat. She looks like she'd break in a strong wind. Why waste a spot on someone who can't even carry proper equipment?" Sarah kept her expression neutral and allowed her shoulders to slump forward even more. She had spent months preparing for this moment, studying each species' psychology and combat doctrines. The key to her mission's success lay not in proving herself immediately, but in allowing them to underestimate her completely. Captain, a reptilian saurian with gleaming green scales, leaned forward from his seat. His species valued physical strength above all else, and his muscular frame rippled as he moved. "Commander, with respect, what can this small creature possibly offer our unit? My people have been fighting wars since before humans discovered fire." Murmurs of agreement echoed around the room. Sarah noticed how several squad members exchanged knowing glances, already writing her off before she'd even spoken a word. "The High Command has made their decision," replied firmly. "Lieutenant comes highly recommended from human military academies. She will prove her worth like everyone else." A crystalline being named Officer, whose transparent body reflected light in prismatic patterns, spoke in a voice like wind chimes. "Prove her worth? Look at her, Commander. She can barely stand upright. How is she supposed to carry a combat pack that weighs more than she does?" Sarah finally spoke, keeping her voice soft and slightly hesitant. I understand your concerns. I know I don't look like much compared to all of you. My people are relatively new to galactic warfare, and I'm still learning your ways. I hope to contribute through analysis and planning rather than frontline combat." The room erupted in what could only be described as alien laughter. They made a deep rumbling sound, the saurians hissed with amusement, and the klaxons clicked their mandibles rapidly. Even the usually stoic crystalline beings chimed in harmonious tones of derision. Sergeant Majoron, a klaxon with razor-sharp limbs and compound eyes, clicked aggressively. His translator converted his words to, "Analysis and planning. War is won through strength and courage, not by hiding behind computers while others die." Sarah nodded meekly. "Of course, Sergeant Major, I didn't mean to imply otherwise. I just want to help however I can." Her submissive response only seemed to fuel their disdain. She could see them dismissing her completely, which was exactly what she wanted. Years of training had taught her that the most dangerous enemy was often the one you never saw coming. Commander activated a holographic display showing their next mission parameters. "We have been assigned to operation. Intelligence suggests a pirate fleet has established a base in the nebula. 3 previous task forces have failed to locate and neutralize the threat. High Command believes a fresh approach may be needed." The hologram showed a swirling purple nebula filled with asteroids and electromagnetic interference. Sarah studied the display intently while maintaining her outward appearance of nervous uncertainty. Lieutenant, a hegemony officer with pale blue skin and telepathic abilities, gestured dismissively toward Sarah. "Perhaps our human analyst can explain why 3 experienced task forces failed where we will succeed." All eyes turned to Sarah again. She could feel their expectations. They wanted her to fumble to prove she didn't belong. Instead, she carefully reviewed the tactical information displayed, her mind working rapidly through possibilities and scenarios her couldn't even imagine. "Well," she began hesitantly, From what I can see here, the previous task forces all used standard search patterns. They approached the nebula from the main shipping lanes, which makes sense tactically, but... She paused, as if unsure whether to continue. But what? Prompted, though his tone suggested he expected little of value. Pirates are usually former military or at least trained in counter-surveillance. They would expect standard approaches. The nebula's electromagnetic interference would mask their presence, but it would also limit their sensor range. If someone could get close enough without using conventional methods. Captain snorted. Every military academy teaches nebula warfare basics. What you're describing is standard doctrine that obviously didn't work. Sarah nodded quickly. You're absolutely right, Captain. I'm sorry for presuming. I'm sure you all know much more about this than I do. The dismissal in their expressions was complete now. She had successfully positioned herself as exactly what they expected. A weak, inexperienced human who had been promoted beyond her abilities through political maneuvering rather than merit. What they didn't know was that Sarah had graduated top of her class from 3 different military academies, held advanced degrees in and tactical warfare, and had spent the last 2 years in deep cover operations that officially didn't exist. The trembling hands they observed had eliminated 17 high-value targets without leaving a trace. The hesitant voice they dismissed had talked her way out of situations that would have killed seasoned soldiers. More importantly, she had been specifically chosen for this mission because intelligence suspected that someone in Strike Team 7 was feeding information to the pirates. 3 task forces didn't fail by accident. They had been expected, their movements predicted, their weaknesses exploited. Her job was to identify the traitor while maintaining operational effectiveness. As the briefing continued, Sarah carefully observed each team member. The commander seemed genuinely frustrated by their mission's difficulty. The Saurian captain displayed typical aggressive confidence. The Klaxon sergeant major showed standard military bearing, but there were subtle tells, micro-expressions, body language, communication patterns that her training had taught her to recognize. Officer Eth, a Mystic Order representative with flowing energy patterns instead of a solid body, had been unusually quiet during the discussion. Most mystics were naturally communicative, but this one seemed to be holding back. Worth noting. Technical Specialist, a cybernetically enhanced cyborg with glowing red optical implants, had been recording everything on multiple devices. Standard procedure, but his data stream seemed unusually comprehensive. Another point of interest. The meeting concluded with standard operational assignments. Sarah was given analysis duties with minimal field exposure, exactly what everyone expected for the weak human. She accepted the assignment with appropriate gratitude and nervous enthusiasm. As the team dispersed, she overheard several conversations in various languages. Her universal translator caught most of it. She'll probably wash out after the first contact. Humans always exaggerate their capabilities. At least she knows her limitations. Perfect, let them underestimate her completely. The next few days would reveal who could be trusted and who was feeding information to their enemies. And when the time came to drop her carefully constructed facade, the shock alone might be enough to save all their lives. Sarah made her way to her assigned quarters, maintaining her slightly clumsy walk and overwhelmed expression until the door sealed behind her. Only then did she allow her true self to surface for a moment. Her posture straightened, her movements became fluid and precise, and her eyes took on the cold calculation of a predator studying its prey. She activated her personal recording device, speaking in clipped professional tones. Mission log, Day 1, cover identity successfully established. Squad shows expected xenophobic tendencies toward human integration. Initial assessment suggests target may be among 6 potential suspects. We'll begin surveillance protocols tomorrow. Sarah then activated her tactical planning software and began analyzing the mission parameters in detail. Within 30 minutes, she had identified 14 different approaches to the nebula that the previous task forces had missed, 7 potential weaknesses in the pirates' defensive strategy, and 3 scenarios where a small, underestimated operative could gather intelligence that conventional forces couldn't access. But she also found something else. Patterns in the failed missions that suggested the pirates had known exactly when and how each task force would approach. Someone with access to classified tactical information was definitely feeding data to the enemy. The next morning brought their first field exercise. The squad gathered in the ship's training bay, a massive space filled with holographic projectors that could simulate any combat environment. Commander had programmed a basic reconnaissance scenario, nothing too challenging, he assured Sarah with barely concealed condescension. Lieutenant will observe from the command center, he announced. She can practice her analysis skills while the rest of us handle the real work. Sarah nodded eagerly, playing her part perfectly. Thank you, Commander. I'll do my best to provide useful observations. The scenario began with the squad advancing through a simulated asteroid field. Sarah watched from the safety of the command center, ostensibly taking notes on their tactical movements. In reality, she was conducting a detailed psychological analysis of each team member's combat behavior. Captain moved with typical Saurian aggression, favoring direct confrontation over subtle maneuvering. Sergeant Major displayed excellent tactical awareness, but relied heavily on conventional klaxon doctrine. Officer used her crystalline body's natural advantages for reconnaissance, but showed predictable movement patterns. More interesting were the subtle details other observers might miss. Technical specialist, cybernetic enhancements included combat subroutines he hadn't mentioned in his service record. Officer Eth's energy form could apparently interface directly with electronic systems, a capability that wasn't standard for her species. And Lieutenant's telepathic abilities seemed stronger than he claimed. She could see him responding to thoughts from team members who weren't speaking aloud. 20 minutes into the exercise, the simulated enemy appeared. The squad moved to engage, following standard military doctrine. Sarah watched their formation, their communication patterns, their tactical decisions. Everything looked normal on the surface. But then she noticed something odd. Officer Eth had briefly interfaced with a communications node, ostensibly to relay orders. But the data stream she'd generated was far more complex than necessary for simple coordination. It looked like she was uploading tactical information to an external source. Sarah immediately began recording the communication signature for later analysis. If Eth was the traitor, this exercise might have just provided the proof they needed. But she had to be careful. Revealing her true capabilities too early could compromise the entire mission. The exercise concluded with the squad successfully neutralizing the simulated enemies. As they gathered for debriefing, Sarah approached Commander with appropriate hesitation. "Sir, I noticed something during the exercise that might be worth investigating," she said quietly. Looked down at her with barely concealed impatience. "What kind of observation, Lieutenant?" There were some unusual communication signatures during the engagement. Probably nothing important, but as an analyst, I thought it might be worth reviewing the data logs. Several squad members exchanged amused glances. To them, it looked like the inexperienced human was grasping at straws, trying to contribute something meaningful to justify her presence. "I'm sure our technical specialist can handle any communication analysis," replied dismissively. "Your time would be better spent studying basic tactical principles." Sarah nodded meekly. "Of course, Commander, I didn't mean to overstep." But she had accomplished what she needed. Now she would have to wait and watch, building her case carefully while maintaining her cover. Because if she was right about Officer Eth, the next mission would likely be another trap. And when that happened, Strike Team 7 would need someone they never saw coming to save their lives. 3 days into their journey toward the nebula, Sarah had established herself as exactly what her expected. A nervous, inexperienced human who tried too hard to be helpful and generally got in everyone's way. She had perfected the art of asking obvious questions, offering suggestions that were technically sound but tactically naive, and fumbling with equipment just enough to reinforce their assumptions about human frailty. What they didn't see were the hours she spent in her quarters each night, conducting advanced analysis of the ship's communication logs, security footage, and personnel files. Her investigation into Officer Eth had revealed concerning patterns, but she needed more evidence before she could act. The breakthrough came during routine maintenance on the ship's sensor array. Sarah had volunteered to help technical specialists with diagnostic routines, ostensibly to learn more about galactic military technology. The cybernetically enhanced soldier had initially been resistant to working with the weak human, but her persistence eventually wore him down. "Just stay out of the way and observe," had told her, his red optical implants glowing as he connected directly to the ship's systems. "These diagnostics require precision you humans lack." Sarah had nodded eagerly and positioned herself where she could see his work while appearing completely focused on taking notes. What she was actually doing was using a micro-scanner hidden in her stylus to record the communication protocols was accessing. That's when she discovered the secondary data stream. Hidden within the normal diagnostic routine was a sophisticated intelligence package being transmitted to an external receiver. Someone was sending real-time updates about their mission status, current location, and tactical capabilities directly to an unknown recipient. The transmission was expertly concealed. It would take someone with her specific training to even detect it, much less decode it. But Sarah had spent 2 years learning advanced cyber warfare techniques from the best human intelligence operatives in known space. Within 6 hours, she had not only decoded the transmission, but traced its origin point. The traitor wasn't Officer Ed. It was technical specialist himself. The discovery created a complex tactical problem, was responsible for the ship's primary sensor array and communication systems. If she exposed him too early, he could sabotage their mission or send a warning to the pirates. But if she waited too long, he might feed their exact approach vector to the enemy, setting up another ambush. Sarah needed to time her revelation perfectly, and she needed evidence that would convince Commander immediately. Until then, she had to continue playing the role of the incompetent human while secretly gathering intelligence. The next morning brought an unexpected complication. As the squad gathered for their daily briefing, Commander received an urgent communication from Fleet Headquarters. His 4 arms moved rapidly across his command console as he processed the incoming data. "Change of plans," he announced grimly. "Long-range sensors have detected debris from the merchant vessel Lucky strike near our destination. Pirates hit another convoy yesterday. High Command wants us to investigate and render aid to any survivors." The mood in the room shifted immediately. A rescue mission meant urgency, potential hostile contact, and the kind of complex tactical situation where every team member's contribution mattered. Sarah could feel her eyes on her, their expressions ranging from concern to outright hostility. Captain spoke first. "Commander, a rescue operation requires combat-ready personnel only. Perhaps Lieutenant should remain aboard the Harmony where she'll be safe." Murmurs of agreement came from around the room. To them, bringing the weak human on a potentially dangerous mission was an unnecessary risk to squad effectiveness. But Sarah had been expecting this moment. According to her analysis, the pirates' attack on the merchant convoy was perfectly timed to coincide with their arrival. Had transmitted their updated mission parameters less than 12 hours ago. This wasn't a coincidence, it was another trap. "I understand your concerns," Sarah said carefully, maintaining her hesitant tone. "But if there are survivors, they might need medical attention or technical assistance. I've had basic training in both areas." Officer's crystalline form shimmered with skepticism. "Basic training from human instructors using human techniques. Our medical and technical procedures are far more advanced than anything your species has developed." "Of course," Sarah agreed quickly. "I just thought, maybe an extra pair of hands might be useful, even if it's just carrying supplies or monitoring equipment." Commander considered for a moment. Sarah could see him weighing the political implications of excluding the first human assigned to an elite unit against the practical concerns of her apparent limitations. "Lieutenant will accompany the team," he decided finally. "She will remain with the secondary support unit and assist as directed." Sarah nodded gratefully, hiding her relief. She needed to be on the mission to stop whatever ambush had arranged. More importantly, she was beginning to understand the larger pattern behind these pirate attacks. 6 hours later, Strike Team 7 deployed from the Harmony in 2 assault shuttles. Sarah found herself assigned to the second shuttle with half the squad, while Commander led the primary team in the first shuttle. The arrangement put her in the same vehicle as, which was both an opportunity and a risk. As they approached the debris field that had once been the merchant vessel Lucky Strike, Sarah studied the tactical situation through the shuttle's sensors. The wreckage was scattered across several cubic kilometers with no obvious signs of survivors. But her analysis revealed something the others had missed. The debris pattern was wrong. Merchant vessels destroyed by conventional pirate weapons would show specific damage characteristics. The Lucky Strike's wreckage showed evidence of precision demolition charges placed at structural weak points. Someone with detailed knowledge of that ship's construction had planned its destruction very carefully. "Sensor sweep complete," reported from his station. "No life signs detected in the immediate area. Wreckage appears consistent with standard pirate attack." Sarah glanced at his displays and saw that he had indeed detected several faint life signs in a nearby asteroid cluster. He was deliberately hiding survivors from the rest of the team. The question was whether he was protecting them or setting up an ambush. "Beginning secondary sweep of surrounding area," Commander's voice crackled over the communication system from the lead shuttle. "Maintain formation and report any anomalies." This was it. Whatever had planned would happen during the search pattern. Sarah had to make her move now, but she needed to do it in a way that wouldn't compromise her cover until the last possible moment. She began by creating a minor equipment malfunction. "Oh no," she said loudly enough for everyone to hear, fumbling with her personal scanner. "I think I broke something. The display is showing all kinds of weird readings." Sergeant Major unclicked his mandibles in annoyance. "Human equipment is notoriously unreliable. Just turn it off before it interferes with our real sensors." But Sarah continued to fiddle with the device, making small, worried sounds as she worked. What she was actually doing was activating a sophisticated electronic warfare package hidden in the scanner's housing. Within 30 seconds, she had gained access to private communication channels. The cybernetically enhanced soldier was indeed transmitting their exact position and search pattern to an external receiver. But the destination wasn't a pirate base. It was a coordinates marker in the asteroid cluster where the survivors were hidden. He was directing someone to their location. Sarah's blood ran cold as she realized the true scope of the conspiracy. The pirates hadn't just been attacking random merchant vessels. They had been specifically targeting ships carrying refugees from contested border systems, then selling the survivors into slavery. Wasn't just providing tactical intelligence. He was helping coordinate a slave trading operation. The survivors hidden in the asteroid cluster weren't waiting for rescue. They were bait in a trap designed to capture Strike Team 7 and add elite military personnel to the slave markets. "Contact bearing 27 Mark IV, came the report from the lead shuttle. "Detecting artificial structures in asteroid cluster, possible survivor shelter." Sarah watched fingers dance across his console, sending final targeting data to their enemies. She could see weapon signatures powering up throughout the asteroid field, hidden gun emplacements that would catch both shuttles in a devastating crossfire the moment they moved to investigate. It was time to drop her act. "Technical specialist," Sarah said quietly, her voice losing all traces of nervousness and uncertainty. "Please step away from your console." The entire shuttle went silent. Everyone turned to stare at the small human who had just given a direct order to one of their most experienced soldiers. Red optical implants focused on her with mechanical precision. "Lieutenant, return to your station immediately," he replied, his cybernetic voice carrying an edge of threat. But Sarah had already moved. In one fluid motion, she drew a weapon that hadn't been there seconds before, a human military sidearm that violated a dozen galactic treaties on directed energy weapons. Her stance shifted from nervous civilian to combat operative, and her expression became cold as vacuum. "Technical specialist, you are under arrest for treason, conspiracy to commit piracy, and accessory to slavery operations," she announced in a voice that carried absolute authority. "Squad, we are flying into a prepared ambush. The asteroid cluster contains hostile weapon emplacements designed to capture our shuttles." The reaction was immediate chaos. Half the squad couldn't process what they were seeing. The weak human they had dismissed was suddenly holding an illegal weapon with the confidence of an expert killer. The other half was trying to understand how she could possibly know about an ambush. Settled the matter by reaching for his backup weapon. Sarah's response was faster than organic reflexes should allow. Her shot took out his cybernetic interface before he could complete the draw, sending sparks flying as his direct connection to the ship's systems died. "Commander," Sarah called into her communication unit, her voice cutting through the chaos with professional clarity. "Abort the rescue approach immediately. You are flying into prepared ambush positions. Technical specialist has been transmitting our tactical data to hostile forces." The response was exactly what she expected. "Lieutenant, what the hell is going on over there?" Sir, I am Lieutenant Sarah, Human Intelligence Division, operating under classified orders. Technical Specialist is the security breach responsible for the failure of previous task forces. The asteroid cluster contains weapon emplacements specifically positioned to disable our shuttles. Even as she spoke, Sarah was moving to Rukhtar's console. Her fingers flew across the interface with inhuman speed, shutting down his transmission systems and accessing the tactical data he had been sending. Within seconds, she had a complete picture of the trap waiting for them. "Lieutenant," came Captain's voice, filled with dangerous skepticism. "Even if what you're saying is true, how could you possibly know about these weapon emplacements?" Sarah allowed herself a cold smile as she transferred the tactical data to the main display. "Because unlike you, Captain, I've actually read Technical Specialist's complete service record, including the parts that were classified above your clearance level. He's been working for the slave traders for over 2 years." The evidence was undeniable. The main display now showed communication logs, the weapon signatures she had detected, and the tactical analysis that revealed exactly how 3 previous task forces had been ambushed. Every squad member could see the pattern of betrayal that had led to dozens of military deaths. "How?" Commander's voice carried a mixture of rage and confusion. "How did you discover this?" "Because that's what I was sent here to do, Commander," Sarah replied simply. "The weak, incompetent human you've been protecting was actually a deep-cover intelligence operative whose job was to identify and neutralize the security breach in Strike Team 7. She paused as the full implications sank in around the shuttle. "And now that I've done that, I suggest we discuss how we're going to rescue the actual survivors and eliminate the slave trading operation that's been using your squad's reputation to lure in victims." For the first time since joining Strike Team 7, Sarah allowed her true self to show. The trembling hands steady, the hesitant voice confident, the weak human revealed as something much more dangerous than any of them had imagined. The ambush was still waiting, but now they had an advantage the pirates never expected. The silence in the shuttle stretched for long seconds as Strike Team 7 tried to process what they had just witnessed. The small, nervous human they had spent days dismissing was now standing over their unconscious technical specialist, holding an illegal weapon with the practiced ease of a professional killer. Officer was the first to break the silence, her crystalline form shimmering with confusion. "This is impossible. Humans don't have the reflexes or training for that kind of combat precision." Sarah holstered her weapon and turned to face the squad, her entire demeanor transformed. Gone was the hunched posture and hesitant voice. She stood straight, her movements precise and confident, her eyes scanning each team member with cold assessment. "Officer, with respect, your species' understanding of human capabilities is approximately 2 years out of date," Sarah replied matter-of-factly. "Human military doctrine has advanced considerably since first contact. We learn fast." Commander's voice crackled over the communication system from the lead shuttle. "Lieutenant, I need a full briefing on your actual mission parameters. Now." "Sir, I am Lieutenant Sarah, Human Intelligence Division, Special Operations Branch. My orders were to integrate with Strike Team 7 under deep cover, identify the security breach responsible for previous mission failures, and neutralize the threat. Secondary objectives included gathering intelligence on pirate operations and slave trading networks." She moved to the tactical console, her fingers dancing across controls with expert precision. "Technical Specialist has been providing detailed intelligence to a slave trading operation for over 26 months. The pirates weren't just attacking random targets. They were specifically hunting refugee vessels and military units with valuable personnel." The tactical display lit up with Sarah's analysis, showing communication patterns, attack timelines, and financial transactions that painted a clear picture of the conspiracy. Even the most skeptical squad members couldn't argue with the evidence. "The ambush ahead contains 14 weapon emplacements positioned at optimal firing solutions for disabling shuttle engines without destroying the vessels," Sarah continued. "The goal is capture, not elimination. They want us alive for the slave markets." Sergeant Major unclicked his mandibles in what Sarah recognized as grudging respect. "How did you detect the weapon signatures when our sensors showed nothing?" Sarah allowed herself a small smile. "Because I've been using equipment your sensors can't detect. Human intelligence technology has certain advantages in electronic warfare applications." What she didn't mention was that her scanner contained processing power equivalent to a military-grade AI system, sensor packages that could detect weapon signatures through several meters of solid rock, and communication intercept capabilities that violated approximately 15 galactic treaties on espionage technology. Captain's voice came from the lead shuttle, still carrying traces of skepticism. Even accepting that you've identified a genuine threat, what do you propose we do about it? We have 2 shuttles against 14 weapon emplacements and unknown hostile forces. We turn their trap against them, Sarah replied immediately. They're expecting to capture Strike Team 7. Instead, Strike Team 7 is going to capture them. She activated a holographic tactical display that showed the asteroid cluster in detail. Red markers indicated hostile weapon positions, blue markers showed the hidden survivor shelter, and green lines traced optimal approach vectors that would avoid the prepared ambush. The weapon emplacements are positioned to catch shuttles approaching from the debris field, Sarah explained. But there's a sensor blind spot on the far side of the largest asteroid. If we approach from that vector, we can insert a small team to neutralize the weapons while the main force provides distraction. Officer Eth's energy patterns shifted in what Sarah recognized as confusion. A small team? The weapon positions are heavily fortified. It would take significant firepower to eliminate them. Not if someone could get close enough to plant demolition charges, Sarah said quietly. Someone small enough to move through maintenance tunnels, someone the enemy would never expect to be a threat. The implication hit the squad like a physical blow. The weak human they had dismissed was volunteering to single-handedly infiltrate the pirate base and destroy their defensive systems from the inside. Absolutely not, Commander's voice carried absolute authority. Lieutenant, regardless of your actual training, this is a suicide mission. I won't authorize a single operative to attempt what you're describing. Sarah had expected this resistance. Military commanders, regardless of species, were trained to minimize casualties and avoid unnecessary risks. What didn't understand was that this wasn't unnecessary. It was the only way to save the survivors and stop the slave trading operation permanently. Commander, with respect, this isn't your decision, she replied firmly. My mission parameters give me tactical authority in situations involving intelligence operations, and I'm not going alone. She turned to face the squad, studying each member with calculating eyes. I need volunteers for a close insertion team. The mission will be extremely dangerous, and success depends on absolute trust in human tactical doctrine. The squad exchanged uncertain glances. Everything they thought they knew about human capabilities had just been shattered. They were being asked to trust their lives to someone they had spent days mocking as weak and incompetent. Surprisingly, it was Sergeant Major who spoke first. Your combat reflexes suggest advanced training, he clicked. What specific capabilities should we expect from human military doctrine? Sarah considered how much to reveal. Her true abilities were classified at levels that would cause galactic incidents if fully disclosed. But she needed these soldiers to trust her enough to follow her into what looked like certain death. Human military evolution has focused on adaptability and unconventional warfare, she said finally. We specialize in turning disadvantages into advantages, using enemy expectations against them, and achieving objectives through methods other species don't anticipate. Such as, Captain pressed, such as convincing an elite military unit that their member is too weak to be useful, then using that assumption to gather intelligence they never thought to protect, Sarah replied. Humans are very good at being underestimated. Lieutenant, the telepathic hegemony officer, suddenly stiffened. His pale blue skin darkened as his abilities probed at Sarah's mind, then recoiled as if burned. Commander, he said urgently, her mental defenses are extraordinary. I've never encountered anything like them. There are layers of consciousness protection that shouldn't be possible for any known species. Sarah turned her attention to her expression becoming dangerously neutral. Lieutenant, I'd recommend not attempting that again. Human intelligence operatives are trained to deal with telepathic intrusion. The countermeasures can be unpleasant. What kind of countermeasures? Asked, his voice tight with concern. The kind that leave telepaths in psychiatric care for months, Sarah replied simply. Please don't make me demonstrate. The revelation sent another shock through the squad. Not only was there weak, human teammate, an expert combatant, and intelligence operative, she apparently had mental defenses capable of seriously injuring telepathic species. Their understanding of human capabilities was proving to be catastrophically incomplete. Commander's voice cut through their speculation. "Lieutenant, assuming I authorize this operation, what are your requirements for the insertion team?" "Two volunteers with close combat specialization, one with demolitions experience, and someone who can provide electronic warfare support," Sarah replied immediately. "The mission profile requires small unit tactics and absolute silence until we reach the target objectives." "And you believe a mixed-species team can achieve what you're describing?" Sarah allowed herself a cold smile. "Commander, one of the things humans have learned about galactic warfare is that every species has unique advantages. The key is combining those advantages in ways the enemy doesn't expect." She gestured to the tactical display. "Sergeant Major on species has natural advantages in close-quarters combat and can move through spaces that would challenge larger soldiers. Officer's crystalline structure provides natural camouflage in asteroid environments, and her body can interface with most electronic systems. Officer Ed's energy form allows her to access areas that solid matter cannot reach." "And what advantage do humans provide?" Captain asked, though his tone suggested he was beginning to understand the answer. "Humans provide the element no one expects," Sarah replied. "We're the species everyone underestimates. The enemy has detailed files on combat doctrine, Saurian tactics, Klaxon strategies, and every other known military approach. They have no idea what to expect from a human operative because we've never shown our true capabilities in galactic warfare." The truth was both simpler and more complex than she could explain. Humans had been preparing for galactic warfare for much longer than anyone realized. While other species saw them as newcomers to interstellar conflict, human intelligence services had been studying every known military doctrine, every tactical approach, every strategic weakness in galactic civilization. They had learned that the galaxy's greatest strength, its diversity of species and approaches, was also its greatest weakness. Every species fought according to predictable patterns based on their evolutionary psychology and cultural development. Humans had designed their military doctrine specifically to exploit those patterns. "I'll volunteer for the insertion team," Sergeant Major announced suddenly. "If Lieutenant's analysis is correct, conventional tactics will result in capture and slavery for all survivors. Unconventional approaches may be our only option." Officer's crystalline form shimmered with decision. "I will also volunteer. My people value logical assessment over emotional prejudice. The evidence suggests Lieutenant's capabilities have been systematically underestimated." Officer Ed's energy patterns flowed in complex configurations that Sarah recognized as deep contemplation. "The energy signatures I detected during our training exercises. You were analyzing us, weren't you? Learning our capabilities and limitations." "Yes," Sarah admitted. "Part of my mission was to assess Strike Team 7's tactical effectiveness and identify ways to optimize combined species operations." "And your assessment?" Sarah looked at each volunteer in turn. "You're all exceptional soldiers limited by conventional thinking. With proper tactical coordination, this team could accomplish things that individual species cannot achieve alone." Commander's voice carried resignation mixed with determination. "Very well, Lieutenant. You have authorization for the insertion mission, but I want constant communication and immediate extraction if the situation becomes untenable." "Understood, sir," Sarah replied. "Prepare to launch diversionary action in 30 minutes. By then, the insertion team will be in position." As the squad prepared for what might be their most dangerous mission, Sarah activated her personal recording system one final time. "Mission log, supplemental, cover identity compromised, but mission objectives remain achievable. Strike Team 7 has proven adaptable to new tactical paradigms. Beginning final phase of operation." She paused, then added something that wasn't part of standard operational procedure. "Personal note, these soldiers deserve to know that humanity considers them allies worth saving. When this is over, they'll understand that humans never intended to be underestimated forever. We were just waiting for the right moment to prove what we're really capable of." The insertion team moved through the asteroid field like ghosts, using the massive rocks as cover while the main force provided distraction near the debris field. Sarah had plotted their approach route to take advantage of each species' natural abilities, creating a path that would have been impossible for any single species unit to follow. Sergeant Majoron led the way through narrow crevices between asteroids, his frame perfectly adapted for tight spaces. Officer provided reconnaissance, her crystalline body refracting light in ways that made her nearly invisible against the rocky surfaces. Officer Eth flowed behind them, her energy form able to compress and expand as needed to navigate obstacles that would stop solid matter. Sarah brought up the rear, monitoring their communication signatures and watching for any signs that their approach had been detected. Her equipment showed the diversionary shuttles beginning their feint toward the debris field, drawing the pirates' attention exactly as planned. Target asteroid in sight, ON reported through their private communication channel. Multiple weapon emplacements visible on primary faces. Estimate 14 confirmed positions plus possible hidden reserves. Electronic warfare signatures suggest sophisticated targeting systems, added. These aren't improvised pirate weapons, this is military-grade hardware. Sarah studied the tactical readouts flowing across her display. The weapon positions were indeed military specification, but she recognized the design patterns. They were hegemony-manufactured plasma cannons, probably acquired through black market channels. More evidence that this slave trading operation had serious financial backing. Energy distribution network follows standard hegemony design principles, Eth observed. Central power core feeds primary grid with backup systems for redundancy. Can you disrupt the power distribution? Sarah asked. Not without triggering automatic backup systems. The energy network would reconfigure faster than I could disable it. Sarah had expected that answer. Sophisticated military equipment included countermeasures against exactly the kind of sabotage they were attempting. They would have to approach this differently. Change of plans, she announced quietly. We're not going to disable their weapons, we're going to steal them. The insertion team stopped moving, confusion evident in their body language. They had expected a demolition mission, not theft. Explain, ON requested. The weapon emplacements are remotely controlled from a central command center, Sarah replied, studying the signal patterns her equipment was detecting. If we can access that command center and override their targeting systems, we can turn their own weapons against them. Override systems of that sophistication would require extensive technical knowledge, pointed out, and access to command codes we don't possess. Sarah allowed herself a slight smile. Officer, what I'm about to show you is classified at levels that would normally require formal intelligence agreements between our species, but circumstances require exceptional measures. She activated a device that had been disguised as a standard military scanner. Immediately, her equipment began interfacing with the pirates' systems in ways that should have been impossible. Within seconds, she had identified the command center's location and begun analyzing its security protocols. How, Eth asked, her energy patterns showing amazement. Human intelligence technology includes capabilities that we've kept classified for strategic reasons, Sarah replied. We've been preparing for galactic warfare much longer than anyone realizes. The truth was more complex than she could fully explain. Human technology had developed along different paths than most galactic species, focusing on adaptability and system integration rather than raw power. Where other species built bigger weapons, humans built smarter tools. Where others relied on overwhelming force, humans perfected precision and subtlety. Command center identified, Sarah announced. Distance 200 meters through asteroid interior. Security includes automated defenses, electronic countermeasures, and approximately 6 hostile personnel. 6 targets for 4 operatives, ON calculated. Manageable if we achieve surprise. We will, Sarah said with quiet confidence, because they're expecting nothing more than standard diversionary tactics from the main force. They have no idea an insertion team is on the asteroid. She began moving toward the concealed entrance she had identified, her movements fluid and silent. The others followed, each contributing their species' advantages to maintain stealth. Sarah's equipment monitored their approach, identifying and neutralizing security sensors before they could trigger alarms. 20 minutes later, they reached the command center's outer perimeter. Through her scanning equipment, Sarah could observe the interior layout and identify the positions of all 6 hostile personnel. They were relaxed, focused on the tactical display showing the diversionary shuttle's approach, completely unaware of the threat closing in behind them. Tactical assessment, Sarah whispered into her communication unit. 6 targets, multiple species. 2 Saurians at primary controls, 1 coordinator, 1 hegemony technician, and 2 Klaxons providing security. Standard criminal psychology profiles suggest they'll surrender if their leaders are neutralized quickly. Rules of engagement, On asked. Non-lethal if possible, but mission completion takes priority over prisoner capture, Sarah replied. These individuals are complicit in slavery operations. Treat them as you would any enemy combatant. She studied the layout one more time, then began outlining their assault plan. Eth, can you access their electronic systems without triggering security protocols? Yes, but it will take approximately 30 seconds to establish control. That's our window. On you take the security positions. Your combat speed advantage should neutralize both Klaxons before they can respond. The hegemony technician is yours. Your crystalline structure should confuse his targeting reflexes. I'll handle the leadership positions. And if they don't surrender? Asked. Sarah's expression became cold. Then we eliminate them and complete the mission. The survivors we're here to rescue don't deserve to suffer because we hesitated to stop their captors. The insertion team positioned themselves at the entrance to the command center. Sarah's equipment showed the diversionary shuttles beginning their final approach to the debris field, drawing maximum attention from the pirate forces. In 90 seconds, Commander would begin the feint that would convince the pirates they were winning. Execute in 10 seconds, Sarah announced. Remember speed and precision. Once we control this facility, the entire operation turns in our favor. The countdown reached 0. Sarah led the assault with inhuman speed, her movements flowing like water as she engaged the 2 Saurian controllers. Her weapon appeared in her hand with mechanical precision, delivering stunning energy pulses that dropped both targets before they could reach their sidearms. On moved like a living blade, his reflexes allowing him to cross the command center in seconds. The 2 Klaxon security guards had barely begun to turn before he rendered them unconscious with precisely applied neural strikes. Engaged the hegemony technician with tactical brilliance, using her crystalline body's light-refracting properties to appear in 3 different locations simultaneously. The confused technician never established a proper target lock before she subdued him with a focused energy pulse. Eth flowed directly into the command systems, her energy form interfacing with the electronic networks at quantum levels. Within 20 seconds, she had established control over the weapon targeting systems, communication networks, and security protocols. The entire assault lasted 37 seconds from entry to complete facility control. Command Center secure, Sarah reported to Strike Team 7. Weapon systems under our control, beginning transmission of targeting data for hostile positions throughout the asteroid cluster. Through the facility's sensors, she could observe the pirates' reaction to the sudden silence from their command center. Confusion was spreading through their ranks as they realized something had gone wrong, but their attention was still focused on the approaching shuttles. They hadn't yet understood the true scope of the threat they faced. Eth, can you access their communication archives? Sarah asked. Yes, substantial data stores present. Evidence of multiple slavery operations, financial transactions, and operational planning. Download everything. This intelligence could save thousands of lives across multiple systems. While gathered critical intelligence, Sarah began the systematic destruction of the pirates' defensive network. One by one, the weapon emplacements that had been positioned to capture Strike Team 7 turned instead on the hidden bases scattered throughout the asteroid cluster. This is incredible, On observed, watching the tactical display as the pirates' own weapons began eliminating their positions. They built the perfect trap, and now it's destroying them instead of their intended victims. Never underestimate the value of understanding your enemy better than they understand themselves, Sarah replied. The pirates prepared for standard galactic military tactics. They never considered what would happen if someone used their own infrastructure against them. Through the command center's communication systems, she could hear the growing panic among the pirate forces. Orders were being shouted in multiple languages as their carefully planned ambush collapsed into chaos. Some were trying to evacuate their positions, Others were attempting to retake the command center, and a few were already proposing surrender. "Commander," Sarah called over the communication link. "Hostile defensive network neutralized. You are clear to proceed with survivor rescue operations, transmitting safe approach vectors now." "Outstanding work, Lieutenant," came the reply. "What's your status?" "Insertion team has secured critical intelligence on slavery operations across 7 systems. Request immediate extraction for prisoners and evidence. Secondary objective complete." What Sarah didn't mention was that the intelligence they had captured was far more significant than anyone realized. The pirates weren't just operating a single slave trading ring. They were part of a network that included corrupt officials from multiple galactic governments, military officers who provided classified information, and business organizations that used slave labor in supposedly legitimate operations. Estimated survivor count 17 individuals, Eth reported from her interface with the pirates' records. Multiple species including 3 humans from earlier attacks. Sarah felt something cold settle in her stomach. 3 human survivors meant that other human vessels had been attacked by this operation. Her people were already being targeted by the slavery network, which meant this mission had implications far beyond Strike Team 7. Prepare the prisoners for transport," she ordered. "Secure all physical evidence. I want complete documentation of everything we've found here." As the insertion team completed their mission objectives, Sarah began planning the next phase of operations. The intelligence they had captured would require extensive analysis, but she could already see patterns that suggested this slavery network was far larger and more dangerous than anyone had suspected. More importantly, she could see that humanity's introduction to galactic warfare was proceeding exactly as planned. Other species were finally beginning to understand that humans brought unique capabilities to the table. The question now was whether they were ready for what came next. "Mission log update," Sarah spoke into her personal recorder. "Primary objectives completed. Strike Team 7 has proven effective in combined species operations. Intelligence gathered suggests larger conspiracy requiring immediate investigation." She paused, then added the assessment that would ultimately determine humanity's future role in galactic affairs. Recommendation: expand human integration into galactic military operations immediately. The threats we're facing require capabilities that humans are uniquely positioned to provide. The asteroid cluster was secure, the survivors were safe, and the immediate threat had been eliminated. But Sarah knew this was just the beginning. The galaxy was about to discover what humans were really capable of when they stopped pretending to be weak. 2 weeks after the asteroid cluster operation, Sarah stood before the Galactic Defense Council in a chamber that housed representatives from 47 different species. The same beings who had once dismissed humans as too weak for serious military consideration now listened with complete attention as she presented intelligence that would reshape their understanding of galactic security threats. The evidence was overwhelming. The slavery network they had uncovered reached into the highest levels of multiple governments, included officers from supposedly elite military units, and operated with resources that suggested backing from major corporate entities. The scope of the conspiracy made their successful operation against the pirates look like a minor skirmish. "The intelligence gathered by Strike Team 7 indicates systematic infiltration of our defense networks," Sarah reported, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had earned the right to address the galaxy's military leadership. 23 separate operations over the past 18 months, resulting in the capture and sale of over 1,500 sentient beings. Fleet Admiral, a massive draconian whose species had been warriors for, leaned forward in his seat. "Lieutenant, your assessment suggests that conventional security protocols have been completely compromised. How do you propose we address a threat of this magnitude?" Sarah activated a holographic display showing the network analysis her team had completed. Red lines connected dozens of nodes across multiple star systems, revealing the true scale of the criminal organization they had infiltrated. "Admiral, conventional security assumes that threats will follow predictable patterns based on known tactical doctrines," she replied. "But this network succeeded because they understood our conventional approaches and designed their operations to exploit our standard procedures." The truth was more complex than she could explain in open session. Human intelligence services had identified the slavery network months before Sarah's mission to strike Team 7. But instead of moving against it immediately, they had used it as a test case to evaluate galactic security weaknesses and demonstrate human capabilities to potential allies. "You're suggesting that our existing military doctrine is fundamentally flawed?" Admiral asked. "I'm suggesting that our existing doctrine is predictable," Sarah corrected. "Every species approaches warfare according to their evolutionary psychology and cultural development. The criminal network studied those approaches and designed countermeasures specifically to defeat them." She gestured to the display, highlighting specific attack patterns. Saurian units were defeated by tactics designed to exploit their aggressive nature. Formations were broken by strategies that turned their coordination requirements against them. Klaxon forces were outmaneuvered by enemies who understood their logical decision-making processes. Commander, who had requested permission to address the council, stood and faced the assembled representatives. "I commanded Strike Team 7 for 3 years before Lieutenant's assignment. In that time, we failed 4 major operations and lost 17 personnel to what we assumed were tactical miscalculations." His 4 arms gestured emphatically as he continued. "Lieutenant identified and neutralized the security breach in 72 hours. She then coordinated a multi-species operation that achieved complete success against superior enemy forces. I believe her recommendations deserve serious consideration." Sarah appreciated the support, but she could see skepticism in many of the alien faces surrounding her. Accepting that humans brought unique capabilities to galactic warfare meant acknowledging that their species had been wrong about human limitations. That was a difficult admission for beings whose cultures valued strength and martial prowess. Secretary General of the Hegemony Council spoke next, his telepathic abilities allowing him to communicate in multiple languages simultaneously. "Lieutenant, assuming we accept your analysis, what specific changes do you recommend to our military structure?" This was the moment Sarah had been preparing for since her assignment began. The question wasn't just about improving galactic security. It was about defining humanity's role in the larger galactic community. "Secretary General, I recommend the immediate integration of human intelligence operatives into all major military units," she replied. "Not as auxiliary personnel, but as full tactical partners with authority to modify operational approaches based on real-time threat assessment." The chamber erupted in discussion as representatives debated the implications in dozens of different languages. Sarah waited patiently, knowing that the evidence she had presented made her recommendations almost inevitable. Admiral called for order. "Lieutenant, your proposal would require fundamental changes to military command structures that have existed for centuries. What assurance can you provide that human integration would improve rather than compromise operational effectiveness?" Sarah had expected this question. She activated a recording that would reshape galactic understanding of recent events. "Admiral, I'd like you to observe battlefield recordings from the asteroid cluster operation." The holographic display shifted to show combat footage from each insertion team member's perspective. The representatives watched in silence as Sarah moved through the pirate command center with speed and precision that violated their understanding of human physical capabilities. But more importantly, they observed the tactical coordination between species that had been achieved through human integration. On's natural abilities combined with Sidvantage's and Eth's unique properties to create a fighting unit more effective than any single species force could achieve. This footage was recorded during an operation where conventional tactics would have resulted in complete failure, Sarah explained. The enemy had prepared countermeasures for every known military approach. Success was achieved by combining species advantages in ways that no single tactical doctrine anticipated. She paused the recording at the moment when the weapon emplacements turned on their former operators. Human intelligence capabilities allowed us to turn the enemy's advantages into weaknesses, but the decisive factor was trust between species that had previously considered each other tactically incompatible. The chamber fell silent as the implications became clear. They weren't just watching a successful military operation. They were observing a new model for galactic cooperation that challenged fundamental assumptions about relations. Fleet Admiral and of the Mystic Order spoke for the first time, her energy form pulsing with complex patterns. Lieutenant, your species has demonstrated capabilities that were not disclosed during initial contact protocols. This suggests that humans have been systematically concealing their military potential. Sarah had prepared for this accusation as well. It was the most dangerous question she would face, because the truth could either establish humanity as a trusted partner or mark them as a potential threat to galactic stability. Admiral N, humans have been preparing for galactic integration since first contact, she replied carefully. We studied existing military doctrines, analyzed historical conflicts, and developed capabilities specifically designed to complement rather than compete with established forces. She activated another display showing human military development over the past 5 years. Every capability we've demonstrated was developed in cooperation with allied intelligence services. Nothing we've done violates any treaty or agreement. We simply chose to reveal our abilities gradually as trust and understanding developed between our species. The political truth was more nuanced than she could fully explain. Humanity had indeed been preparing for galactic warfare much longer than anyone suspected. But they had also been studying the political implications of revealing advanced capabilities too quickly. History showed that newly contacted species who displayed impressive military technology too early were often viewed as threats rather than allies. What assurance can you provide that human capabilities will be used to support rather than dominate galactic defense networks? Admiral asked. Sarah looked around the chamber at the assembled representatives, beings whose species had been fighting wars across the galaxy who had built the current defense systems, who had established the protocols she was asking them to change. Admiral, humans didn't develop advanced military capabilities because we wanted to conquer the galaxy, she said simply. We developed them because we wanted to belong to it. Everything we've learned about warfare, tactics, and cooperation has been focused on one goal, proving that humanity deserves a place among the galactic community. She gestured toward the evidence displays. The slavery network we uncovered was targeting multiple species, including humans. The pirates weren't just threatening galactic security, they were threatening us all equally. Our response wasn't to protect only human interests, it was to protect everyone. Secretary General leaned back in his chair, his telepathic abilities apparently probing at the emotional undercurrents of her statement. Your species seeks acceptance rather than dominance. Our species seeks partnership, Sarah replied. We've spent 5 years studying galactic civilization not because we wanted to exploit its weaknesses, but because we wanted to understand its strengths. Human military doctrine isn't designed to replace existing approaches, it's designed to enhance them. The debate continued for another hour, but Sarah could sense that the fundamental decision had already been made. The evidence was too strong, the demonstrated results too clear, the potential benefits too significant for any rational government to ignore. When Admiral called for the final vote, the result was 43 votes in favor of expanded human integration, with 4 abstentions and no votes against. It wasn't just approval, it was an endorsement of humanity's place in galactic affairs. As the session concluded, Sarah reflected on how much had changed since her assignment to strike Team 7. She had started the mission pretending to be weak, incompetent, and harmless. She was ending it as the architect of a new model for galactic cooperation. But more importantly, she had helped her understand that strength came in many forms. Sergeant Major On had learned that human tactical thinking could enhance Klaxon precision. Officer had discovered that combined species operations could achieve results impossible for individual approaches. Officer Eth had realized that energy-based beings could work effectively with solid matter species when proper coordination was established. Commander found her after the session concluded. His massive frame no longer seemed intimidating, it seemed protective, like a guardian watching over a valued teammate. Lieutenant, he said formally, then paused and continued in a more personal tone. Sarah, I owe you an apology. When you first joined Strike Team 7, I saw you as a political burden that would compromise our effectiveness. I was wrong. You weren't wrong, Commander, Sarah replied. You saw exactly what I wanted you to see. The mission required that I be underestimated until the right moment came to reveal the truth. And now, Sarah looked around at the representatives from 47 different species, all of whom were now discussing how to integrate human capabilities into their military structures. The weak, nervous human they had dismissed had fundamentally altered the balance of galactic power. Now we find out whether the galaxy is ready for what humans can really do when we stop pretending to be weak, she said. 6 months later, Strike Team 7 had been expanded into Strike Force 7, with human operatives integrated into 12 different units across the Galactic Defense Network. The slavery network had been completely dismantled, and 17 other criminal organizations had been identified and neutralized using techniques developed through human-alien cooperation. Sarah had been promoted to colonel and placed in charge of the new integration division. Her mission was no longer to pretend to be weak. It was to help the galaxy become stronger through cooperation rather than competition. But late at night, when she reviewed mission reports and planned new operations, she sometimes smiled at the memory of her first briefing with Strike Team 7. The trembling hands they had mocked had reshaped galactic civilization. The hesitant voice they had dismissed had spoken for humanity's future among the stars. She had pretended to be weak, and in doing so had proven that humans were stronger than anyone imagined. Not because they could conquer their enemies, but because they could turn their enemies into allies, their weaknesses into advantages, and their fears into hope for a better future. The galaxy was still learning what humans were capable of. But now they were learning together, as partners rather than strangers, building something stronger than any single species could achieve alone. And that discovery would change everything. The asteroid cluster loomed ahead, filled with hidden weapons and enemy forces that thought they were hunting prey. They were about to discover that they had miscalculated badly. Strike Team 7 wasn't prey, they were predators. And the most dangerous predator among them was the one they had dismissed as too weak to matter. Thought they were hunting Strike Team 7. They had no idea that Strike Team 7 was now hunting them. The ship continued its journey toward the nebula, carrying a squad of elite warriors who thought they knew exactly what to expect from their member. They couldn't have been more wrong.